Children hated by their parents try to love and understand them. We wish to understand you and help you. We want help. We want peace.
But that's the only exit.
The racial recognition gene has been located on chromosome 7, and it is recognized as a defect to lack racial stereotyping and racial recognition skills. A lack of skill which children suffering from Williams syndrome are lacking. This thus inversely per automatique claim that racial recognition and stereotyping is the norm, as located on chromosome 7. I'd also like to, although it's irrelevant to this series, point out that the racial recognition that normal healthy human beings are able to make corresponds to a genetic reality as expressed quickly by these evidences. The point of making this point is to show that the natural and inherited skill of racial recognition is pre-rational and able to make rational and accurate categorizations and observations subconsciously without much conscience and rational thought. The general accuracy of this inherited skill observable in normal children has been criticized by cultural Marxist Boasians, who do not like this inherited ability and its potential consequences. Their criticism is based on the fact that there is a genetic haziness and that groups are more similar than dissimilar. However, this is disingenuous of them, as this applied to and is the norm of other species and subspecies of other species alike, i.e. it's irrelevant and the categorization is still pre-rational and corresponds to genetic reality. Again, on chromosome 7. The point was not to show that the racial categorization and stereotyping is accurate, but mostly that the behavior has genetic roots discovered in healthy human beings. Next, we're going to talk more about the implicit association tests.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a question that can touch a nerve. Are you prejudiced? Many people would answer no, but how many people would be willing to take a test to prove it?
You may be saying, not me, I'm not prejudiced. But is it possible that virtually all of us have a hidden racial bias, hidden even from ourselves? That's exactly what this test is designed.
We find that frequently. Some people are disturbed by their results. Ready? Go.
Dateline put this experiment to a difficult challenge, testing a cross-section of men and women, including some who have impeccable credentials in race relations. A civil rights attorney.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, here it is.
During the first half of the test, black is linked to bad and white is linked to good.
Right.
For Rhonda, this half of the test is a breeze. She never makes a mistake.
Left.
Okay, very good. Now, we'll give you the other one.
But let's see how she does when the information is reversed, when the left box, marked bad, has a white face, and the right box, labeled good, has a black face.
Left.
Suddenly,
right,
the test
right,
becomes much more
right,
difficult
left.
for Rhonda. About a third of the way through,
right,
she makes a
right.
mistake, linking the white face to the right box, even though that shows a black face.
I lost it.
Okay.
Rhonda's score indicates a strong preference for white. Is this because she unconsciously associates white with good?
Well, I could tell when I was taking it, I had so much of an easier time doing the white with good, much to my dismay.
We all might be prejudiced in ways we're not aware.
Mazarin Banaji of Yale University and Anthony Greenwald of the University of Washington created this test. What do you think this test reveals that perhaps we didn't know before?
How fair are we being when we judge a person?
Okay.
Betsy, an events planner, had similar results.
Left, right.
Once again,
right,
on the part of the test
left,
which associates
left.
black with good and white with bad, a white
Left,
test taker
left.
I don't know. You held it together almost to the end.
Betsy's test shows a preference for white.
There would be many people who would say, what's wrong with showing a preference for your own race?
In some contexts, it's actually illegal to do so. In employment contexts, in college admissions.
Well, Jeff's experience is not unusual. Let's say you are having spatial difficulties, or let's say you've never used a computer before. It could easily have been the case that if that was the problem, that we could see a strong preference for black over white, but that didn't happen.
In fact, this experiment has passed scientific scrutiny. And the results of the professor's experiments have been published in leading psychological journals.
This test
Our
does say
results
something.
reflect the professor's findings.
Something like 79 or 80% of white Americans who take the test show a preference for white over black.
Go.
Left, right.
And what of the other African Americans
left,
we tested?
right,
Heather
left,
is an assistant district
left,
attorney.
right.
On the part of the test where the black face is paired with the word bad,
Right.
Heather has noticeable difficulty and can't finish. She showed a strong preference for African Americans, and her pride was unabashed.
This made me feel more comfortable knowing that I've embraced my culture.
Left.
Randolph, a high school music teacher, also showed a preference for his own race.
Does it concern you at all? Strong preference for African Americans?
Does that score mean that I do not like European Americans? No.
That's exactly what it comes out as, a strong preference for blacks, and it doesn't
The
surprise
professors note that there's a difference in reactions between blacks and whites when they find out they have a preference for their own race.
Of course it bothers me, but
You could say it's pride or prejudice. What blacks consider a badge of healthy self-esteem, many whites regard as an embarrassing revelation.
when I did poorly on the black being good, is it because I can't come to say that I'm bad? And is it just in our nature that there has to be an us and a them, and them is going to be the bad guy?
The professors say this test also reveals something else, something more subtle but equally important, that even unconscious racial biases may affect your behavior. For instance, do white teachers unconsciously favor white students? Jennifer teaches 6th grade.
Right. Jennifer, your score came out as a strong preference. Do you believe that those unconscious attitudes for whites affects your teaching? I would hope not. I don't view people by what they look like. I view people on what they can do and what they feel and how they are.
Jennifer says she consciously strives to treat students equally. But psychologists say all teachers should be aware that hidden biases can still seep through. These aren't just words and faces on a screen, not just abstract images. This test suggests that when it comes to the potent question of race, our subconscious is making decisions every day, decisions that in real time, in real life, have real consequences.
Let's imagine that you are correct and all of the anti-racists are correct, and that American society is just seething with anti-black or anti-Hispanic racism, that there are barriers set up everywhere blacks or Hispanics turn. Let's assume that that's true. Once again, this suggests that despite decades and decades of every institution in America preaching against this, militating against this, advocating against it, it's something that persists. Why don't we then recognize that if it is something that is so durable, so deeply ingrained in the wicked white man's mind or brain, why don't we just let him go away?
I don't happen to think that most white people, in fact, even give a second thought to discriminating against people of color, or even think very much about the issue until it's brought up to them in a conversation like this or whatnot. But what I do believe is that the institutions of our society have been set up in such a way as to generate and replicate from generation to generation inequality. Many of the people I meet who, in fact, I think perpetuate racism in the institutional sense, in the sense of inequality between people within an institutional setting are people who themselves I would not call racist in the sense of being ideologically predisposed to racism. So, for example, I'm talking about people in the business matter of institutional patterns and practices and policies which bring about racially inequitable results.
Well, see, you are now describing something that would be even more difficult to change. You're saying people don't even have to have any kind of racial consciousness. They don't have to have any racial ill will. They just have to be just cruising along about race, blindly perpetuating racism. You're talking about a situation in which you are trying to change, which individuals aren't even guilty. You want to blow up the institutions of the society despite the fact that the individuals in it have done no wrong. Hold on. That is an even greater Sisyphean, impossible task than trying to change individual minds.
Jared Taylor and the show points out one of the problematic social consequences this finding has. That brings us to malleability. How malleable is it? We will talk more about this in the next video, so for now, let's talk more about the implicit-explicit gap. Having a slight preference is having a lot of preference. For example, some explicit and self-subscribed white nationalists embarrassingly admit that they only had a slight preference. Here's other complementing studies in great quantity and quality. Here's a cross-cultural investigation of implicit racial attitudes in Japan. They also believe that racist attitudes have a basis in the mirror neuron system. This system, which is linked to feelings of empathy, may also offer a clue as to why prejudice evolved by looking at situations where people are less empathetic to some people and more empathetic to others. The mirror neuron system is less responsive to people we don't like. This study shows that there is a greater amygdala activity observed for black faces than white faces. I'm not sure if I would call it a meme, but the term ivory tower liberal, or liberals do what I say, not what I do, or liberal hypocrisy are terms that reflect the observed reality according to many people. And if you are a liberal, you might have scoffed at that, but it is interesting that, at least in this case, there actually is such a scientifically discovered implicit-explicit attitude and behavioral gap among liberals more than anyone else. What implications this finding has, I'll let you decide, but what it at least tells me is that it inherently says something about the level of mutability, or should I say lack of mutability, of behaviors and thoughts we apply to the concept we call racism. Speaking about malleability, we will talk more about this in the next and final video of the whole series.
Wake up, Artyom, wake up!
Wait, he's coming through. Put the light away, you're blinding him.